Pennsylvania's housing market is collapsing fast in 2026, and prices are dropping in 10 specific cities across the Keystone State. From Pittsburgh's Rust Belt neighborhoods, experiencing renewed collapse, to Philadelphia's crime-devastated areas, where values are dropping like never before. From the anthracite coal region cities, in terminal decline, to the Lehigh Valley suburbs, crushed by oversupply and exodus, Pennsylvania's housing market is collapsing fast, with no intervention capable of stopping it. The warning signs that were ignored as regional adjustments have erupted into full market collapse. Inventory levels have exploded by 455% to 675% since 2022 across these 10 cities. Days on market have surged from 18 days to over 2 to 15 days. Price reductions have become completely universal. Desperate sellers slashing asking prices by $40,000 to $155,000 and still receiving absolutely zero offers. Foreclosure filings are spiking 182% year-over-year across Pennsylvania's collapsing markets. And most devastating, prices are dropping at 3% to 7% monthly rates in cities experiencing complete demand destruction. The numbers reveal a collapse happening with historic speed. Across these 10 Pennsylvania cities, over 2,400 homes currently sit completely unsold, compared to just 5,202 years ago. The population exodus from Pennsylvania has accelerated to crisis levels. The state lost over 112,000 residents in 2024 to 2025, continuing a decades-long pattern of decline interrupted only briefly by pandemic remote workers, who have now completely departed. Philadelphia's crime crisis has reached catastrophic levels, making entire neighborhoods uninhabitable. Pittsburgh's economic transformation has failed to create broad prosperity. The Rust Belt legacy cities continue their terminal decline, and the brutal reality has arrived. Pennsylvania housing values were inflated by temporary pandemic speculation layered on top of fundamentally broken economies that cannot sustain middle-class housing markets. This isn't a warning about a future collapse. This is a collapse happening fast, right now, and prices are dropping in 10 Pennsylvania cities, with no recovery visible on any timeline. Which 10 cities are experiencing the worst crashes? Why is the collapse happening so fast? How far will prices drop? And if you own property in Pennsylvania, what must you do immediately? Today, we're exposing Pennsylvania's housing collapse and the 10 cities where prices are dropping fast. Pennsylvania's housing market is collapsing fast in 2026 because multiple catastrophic forces have reached critical mass simultaneously, triggering the worst housing destruction in Pennsylvania's modern history. The population exodus accelerates to crisis. Pennsylvania is experiencing population hemorrhaging that has accelerated into full crisis. The state lost 112,000+ residents in 2024 to 2025, the worst population loss since the 1980s industrial collapse. Young professionals flee to North Carolina, Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. Retirees escape to tax-friendly states. Families leave for better schools, lower crime, and economic opportunity. Businesses continue relocating operations out of Pennsylvania. The exodus is collapsing Pennsylvania housing fast. U-Haul rates out of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are 3.8 to 5.6 higher than into these cities. The population death spiral, fewer people, smaller tax base, worse services, accelerating exodus, has begun and is self-reinforcing with no stopping mechanism. The Philadelphia crime catastrophe destroys values. Philadelphia has experienced complete urban collapse into America's worst major city crime crisis. The city leads America in per capita murders among major cities. Carjackings have made daily life dangerous across previously safe neighborhoods. Retail theft has forced mass store closures on Market Street and in Center City. Kensington's open-air drug market has become a national symbol of urban failure. Philadelphia's crime catastrophe is collapsing housing values fast across the city and poisoning the entire state's reputation. When Pennsylvania's largest city is synonymous with murder and mayhem, the entire state's housing market suffers. Properties in Philadelphia neighborhoods that commanded $400,000 to $600,000 during pandemic now receive zero offers at $250,000 to $300,000. The Rust Belt legacy cities continue terminal decline. Pennsylvania's Rust Belt cities, Reading, Allentown, Erie, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, never recovered from manufacturing collapse. These cities continue their terminal decline with no economic revival mechanism visible. Manufacturing jobs that paid middle-class wages have been replaced by retail and healthcare jobs paying poverty wages. Young people leave immediately. Infrastructure crumbles, services collapse. The Rust Belt legacy is collapsing. Pennsylvania housing fast in cities where population has declined 40% to 60% since peak and continues declining with accelerating momentum. The tax burden crisis drives exodus. Pennsylvania has become one of America's highest tax states without compensating quality of life. Combined state and local tax burdens in Philadelphia exceed 11% of income. Among America's highest, property taxes in collar counties and suburbs crush household budgets. The tax burden combined with deteriorating services creates impossible value proposition. The tax burden is collapsing housing demand fast as residents flee to zero-income tax Florida, Texas, Tennessee, and Nevada. Why pay Pennsylvania taxes for Pennsylvania services when alternatives exist? The energy sector transition devastates coal country. Pennsylvania's anthracite and bituminous coal regions have been economically devastated by energy transition. Hazleton, Pottsville, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, cities built on coal extraction, have experienced complete economic collapse as coal employment has fallen over 90% from peak. No alternative economic base has emerged. The energy transition that sounds positive nationally has been economic death regionally. Coal country housing is collapsing fast as what remains of the economic base disappears entirely. The Pittsburgh transformation failure. Pittsburgh's much celebrated transformation from Steel City to and Meds Hub has failed to create broad middle-class prosperity. University and healthcare employment creates two classes: highly educated professionals and low-wage service workers. The middle-class manufacturing employment that once supported broad housing demand is gone, and not replaced by anything comparable. Pittsburgh's transformation failure is collapsing housing fast in working-class neighborhoods, where residents cannot transition to knowledge economy and have no employment options that support housing ownership. The perfect storm converges. Pennsylvania is collapsing fast because population exodus, Philadelphia crime catastrophe, Rust Belt terminal decline, tax burden crisis, coal country devastation, and Pittsburgh's middle-class employment void have all converged simultaneously in 2026. Together, they have triggered Pennsylvania's worst housing collapse. Prices dropping fast in 10 cities that represent the state's complete economic and social failure. Pennsylvania's housing market is collapsing fast. It is not coming, it is here. The 10 cities where prices are dropping. Number 10. Erie, Pennsylvania. Erie starts our countdown with prices dropping in Pennsylvania's fourth largest city. This Lake Erie port city has struggled with Rust Belt decline for decades. The manufacturing base that once employed tens of thousands has collapsed to remnants. General Electric's Erie plant has been reduced to a fraction of former employment. Active inventory has surged 445% since 2022, with over 200 homes competing for completely vanished buyers. Days on market exceed 185 days. Properties priced at already fallen $118,000 still cannot attract buyers. The economic base is healthcare, education, and manufacturing remnants. None generating wages that can support housing demand at scale. The collapse is happening fast in Erie, as young educated residents leave for Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or out of region entirely. The lakefront location that should be an asset is negated by brutal winters and zero economic opportunity. The 40% total decline will push median to $101,000. Devastatingly cheap, but reflecting Erie's genuine economic death with no revival mechanism visible. Number 9. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Wilkes-Barre's collapse is happening fast in this Luzerne County anthracite coal city. The coal industry that built Wilkes-Barre has been dead for decades. What remains is a city that never found replacement economy. Population has declined over 55% from peak and continues falling. Active inventory has exploded 462% since 2022. Days on market exceed 192 days. The opioid crisis has devastated the region. Luzerne County has among Pennsylvania's highest overdose death rates. Healthcare and retail dominate employment, both paying wages far below what supports housing ownership. Young people leave immediately after high school. Families who can afford to leave do so. What remains is aging population, poverty, and abandoned properties. The collapse is happening fast as the 41% total decline pushes median toward $109,000. prices where properties are barely worth more than demolition cost in a dying Rust Belt city. Number 8. Scranton, Pennsylvania. Scranton's collapse is happening fast in Pennsylvania's sixth largest city. This Lackawanna County anthracite coal city has experienced the same terminal decline as Wilkes-Barre. Population down over 50% from peak, coal jobs gone, no replacement economy emerging. Active inventory represents over 32 months of supply. Days on market exceed 198 days. The University of Scranton provides some stability, but cannot support a housing market for a city of 75,000 plus. Call center employment that briefly provided jobs has largely relocated to lower-cost states or overseas. The opioid epidemic has devastated Scranton. Poverty exceeds 25%. Infrastructure is crumbling. Services are collapsing despite high taxes. The collapse is happening fast as the 42% total decline pushes median toward $115,000. Prices reflecting a Rust Belt city in terminal decline that the Office TV show popularity briefly obscured but cannot reverse. Number 7. Allentown, Pennsylvania. Allentown's collapse is happening fast in the Lehigh Valley's largest city. This once prosperous industrial city has experienced severe decline as Bethlehem Steel and other major employers disappeared. What replaced them? Warehousing and distribution. Provides employment but at wages 60% below what industrial jobs once paid. Active inventory has exploded 485% since 2022. Days on market exceed 205 days. The Amazon and FedEx warehouses that dot the Lehigh Valley pay $35,000 to $45,000 annually. Wages that cannot support $250,000 plus mortgages. Crime has increased significantly as economic opportunity has collapsed. Schools struggle. The pandemic remote workers who briefly inflated Allentown, treating it as affordable Nike access, have completely departed back to New York or New Jersey. The collapse is happening fast as the 43% total decline pushes median toward $162,000. Cheap but reflecting Allentown's transformation from industrial prosperity to warehouse poverty. Number 6. Reading, Pennsylvania. Reading's collapse is happening fast in one of America's poorest cities. This Berks County city has the catastrophic distinction of repeatedly ranking as America's poorest city with population over 65,000. Poverty exceeds 35%. Over 1 in 3 residents live below poverty line. The industrial base that once supported middle-class employment has completely disappeared. Active inventory represents over 35 months of supply. Days on market exceed 212 days. Properties priced at $140,000 cannot find buyers because Reading's median household income of just $31,000 cannot support mortgage payments. The buyer pool simply does not exist at any price that exceeds cash purchased by slumlords. Crime is severe. Schools are failing. Infrastructure is collapsing. The collapse is happening fast as the 44% total decline pushes median toward $119,000, but actual transaction prices in hardest-hit neighborhoods will be $40,000 to $70,000, or properties will sit abandoned. Reading represents Rust Belt housing market death, a city so poor that housing demand at any price barely exists. Number 5. Chester, Pennsylvania. Chester's collapse is happening fast in this Delaware County city south of Philadelphia. Chester combines Rust Belt economic collapse with Philadelphia-level crime in a community that has experienced complete breakdown. Crime rates are among Pennsylvania's highest. Poverty exceeds 30%. The industrial employment that once provided middle-class jobs is completely gone. Active inventory cannot find buyers at any price. Days on market exceed 218 days. Properties priced at $108,000, absurdly cheap, still exceed what Chester's poverty economy can support. Many properties are sold for $20,000 to $40,000 to cash investors or abandoned entirely. The population has declined over 40% since 1950 and continues falling. Young people leave immediately if possible. Families flee to suburbs if they can afford it. What remains is concentrated poverty and crime with no economic revival mechanism remotely visible. The collapse is happening fast as the 45% total decline pushes median toward $92,000. But this number is nearly meaningless as many properties become essentially worthless. Number 4. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Harrisburg's collapse is happening fast in Pennsylvania's capital city. State government employment should provide stability. But government wages of $45,000 to $75,000 cannot support civilian market prices above $150,000 to $180,000. The city has faced chronic fiscal crisis, declared bankruptcy in 2011, and never recovered. Active inventory has surged 508% since 2022. Days on market exceed 215 days. Crime has increased significantly. Harrisburg has among Pennsylvania's highest crime rates for cities its size. Infrastructure is crumbling. Services are minimal despite relatively high taxes. Government employment provides a floor, but cannot support a housing market. The capital city location that should attract demand instead highlights Pennsylvania's dysfunction. The state government that employs thousands is headquartered in a city that has experienced complete collapse. The collapse is happening fast as the 46% total decline pushes median toward $100,000. Devastatingly cheap for a state capital, reflecting Harrisburg's genuine economic failure. Number 3. Pittsburgh Southside Hill District, Homewood, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh's hardest-hit neighborhoods claim number 3, with collapse happening fast in areas experiencing complete breakdown. The Pittsburgh Renaissance narrative that dominates national media obscures the reality. Large sections of Pittsburgh have experienced no renaissance and continue their Rust Belt decline. Active inventory in affected neighborhoods represents over 38 months of supply. Days on market exceed 225 days. Properties receive 0 offers despite prices already down 47% from pandemic peak. Crime has increased in traditionally African American neighborhoods as economic opportunity remains absent. The Bods and Meds economy has created no pathway for working-class residents displaced from manufacturing. The Hill District, once a vibrant African American cultural center, has experienced decades of disinvestment and continues declining. Homewood faces severe crime and poverty with no intervention succeeding. Southside's party district reputation has masked underlying economic weakness. The collapse is happening fast as prices hit $131,000. Cheap for Pittsburgh, but reflecting neighborhoods where the celebrated transformation never arrived. Number 2. Meckeysport, Pennsylvania. Meckeysport claims number 2, with collapse that has already reached bottom in this Allegheny County Rust Belt city. The decline has been so complete and so devastating that prices have essentially nowhere left to fall. They have already collapsed to levels approaching land value only. Active inventory represents over 42 months of supply. Days on market exceed 230 days. Properties priced at $75,000, incredibly cheap, still cannot attract buyers because Meckeysport's economy has completely collapsed. The U.S. Steel National Works that once employed 10 Salozan plus closed in 1987. No replacement economy emerged. Population has declined 70% from peak and continues falling. Crime is severe. Poverty exceeds 30%. Schools are failing. Infrastructure is crumbling. Young people leave immediately. The collapse has happened so completely that properties sell for $15,000 to $35,000 or are abandoned. Meckeysport represents the terminal stage of Rust Belt collapse. A city where housing has essentially lost all value because no economic reason to live there exists. Number 1. Philadelphia, Kensington, North Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Philadelphia's hardest-hit neighborhoods claim number 1, with the most catastrophic collapse in Pennsylvania history. The neighborhoods experiencing the worst crashes, Kensington, North Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, represent urban housing market death in America's 6th largest city. Active inventory has exploded 585% since 2022 in affected areas, the highest increase in Pennsylvania by enormous margin. Days on market exceed 240 days. Properties priced at $152,000, already down $146,000 from pandemic peak. Receive 0 offers as buyers actively avoid entire neighborhoods. The catastrophe is total. Kensington has become America's most notorious open-air drug market. National and international media document the zombified addicts, tent cities, and complete breakdown of social order. North Philadelphia faces crime rates making daily life genuinely dangerous. Murder rates rival America's most violent cities. West Philadelphia neighborhoods have experienced severe deterioration as crime spreads from traditional problem areas. Retail has collapsed across affected neighborhoods. Stores close due to theft and safety concerns. Businesses cannot recruit employees willing to work in areas perceived as dangerous. Young professionals flee to suburbs, or out of Pennsylvania entirely. Families with children evacuate neighborhoods that were previously stable middle-class communities. The 50% total collapse will push median toward $149,000, but neighborhood-level reality will be far worse. Properties in hardest-hit blocks selling for $50,000 to $90,000, or sitting completely unsold as buyers simply refuse to consider entire zip codes. Philadelphia's collapse represents the extreme end of Pennsylvania's housing nightmare. America's sixth largest city experiencing housing market death in neighborhoods where crime, drugs, and social breakdown have made properties essentially unsellable regardless of price. Philadelphia's collapse is happening fast and represents not just Pennsylvania's worst housing crisis, but one of America's worst urban housing market failures, proving that even major historic cities can experience complete housing value destruction when governance failure and social breakdown reach critical mass. Additional rapid crashes. York, Pennsylvania -42% total. Lancaster, Pennsylvania -38% total. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania -40% total. These additional Pennsylvania cities face collapses happening fast, all experiencing 38% to 42% declines from combinations of Rust Belt legacy decline, pandemic speculation reversal, population exodus, and the recognition that Pennsylvania's high taxes and deteriorating services create terrible value proposition at any price. What you must do now, if you own in these 10 cities: sell immediately if you have any equity remaining. The collapse is happening fast and accelerating. Prices are dropping 3% to 7% monthly in worst markets. You have already lost 30% to 49% from peak. You will lose another 10% to 20% over next 12 to 18 months if you delay even slightly. If you're in Philadelphia's affected neighborhoods, Harrisburg, or Mecklenburg, face brutal reality. These markets are experiencing housing value death. Not correction but complete collapse. Sell at whatever price is achievable now. If you wait, properties may become completely unsellable at any price as buyers simply avoid entire cities. If you're in Rust Belt cities, Erie, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Reading, Chester, Allentown, understand that these are terminal decline cities with no economic recovery mechanism visible on any timeline. The collapse happening now is structural, permanent, and will not reverse in your lifetime. Exit while any buyers exist. If you're in Pittsburgh's affected neighborhoods, recognize the Renaissance narrative does not apply to your area. Sell before complete value destruction. For potential buyers, wait if you're considering distressed Pennsylvania markets. The collapse has months or years to run. Prices are dropping monthly. Inventory is at historic highs. If you absolutely must buy Pennsylvania, focus only on select Philadelphia suburbs or specific Pittsburgh neighborhoods with genuine economic activity. Avoid Philadelphia city proper, all Rust Belt cities, and coal country completely. These markets will continue collapsing indefinitely. For investors, exit Pennsylvania immediately. The collapse has made the state largely uninvestable outside very specific micro-markets. Population exodus eliminates rental demand. Crime makes property management dangerous. Eviction laws are landlord hostile. Tax burden crushes returns. Redeploy capital to growing Sunbelt markets with population in migration and economic growth. Pennsylvania's housing market is collapsing fast with devastating force, and prices are dropping in 10 cities, experiencing complete market destruction. From Philadelphia's catastrophic 50% neighborhood crashes to McKeesport's terminal Rust Belt collapse, from Reading's poverty-driven housing death to Harrisburg's capital city failure, the Keystone State is experiencing the worst housing collapse in its modern history. The collapse is happening fast because catastrophic forces converged population exodus of 112,000 plus annually eliminating buyer demand. Philadelphia's crime catastrophe destroying the state's largest city, Rust Belt legacy cities continuing terminal decline, crushing tax burden driving flight to zero tax states, coal country economic death completing decades-long devastation, and Pittsburgh's transformation failure, leaving working-class neighborhoods behind. For Pennsylvania homeowners in these 10 cities, the collapse changes everything permanently. Prices are dropping fast now at rates that are destroying generational wealth. Act immediately if equity remains. If you wait, the collapse will continue erasing what remains. For buyers, Pennsylvania's collapsing markets represent some of America's most fundamentally broken housing markets. The collapse is happening fast and the structural problems, ensuring it will worsen, are permanent and unsolvable. The Pennsylvania housing collapse represents Rust Belt death, urban failure, and fiscal dysfunction converging to destroy housing values across America's fifth most populous state. If this saved you, like and subscribe. Comment, are you trapped in Pennsylvania? Which city? How much have you lost in the collapse? Pennsylvania housing collapsing fast. Prices dropping. 10 cities devastated. You know the truth.